Odric, Master Tactician, Jenna Helland from Set Magic 2013. A town crier hollered the evening news on the cobbled street below the open window. Execution at the Bloodless Wall, tomorrow at sunshine. The Healers of Heron are at Child's Wall tomorrow. When Odric last looked out the window, it had been early afternoon. Now, a cold mist had settled in Thraburn, and the city was cloaked in evening darkness. Where's the moon? Odric's arm jerked involuntarily, nearly upending his ink jar. No, he reminded himself, it no longer matters. The phases of the moon were no longer predictions of life and death, now that Avacyn had returned and cleansed the world, or at least begun to. He glanced across the oak table at Greet, his lieutenant, who looked surprised by his sudden movement. Sir Odric, Master Tactician, commander of the Ganafoy Riders, and recipient of the Moon Silver accommodation, didn't startle easily. Sir? Greet asked. Darkness fell, he told her. She glanced out the window, and he saw similar emotions play across her features. We've spent too many years as prey, too many years spent cowering in the shadows. There's still no sign of Ludovic, Greet continued, scanning the parchment. Amila spotted him near Estwald, but he moved on before the Cathars could detain him. So the hunt continues. Just the thought of the mad alchemist made his head ache. Odric leaned back and pressed his palms against his temples. This was a temporary assignment, one he had requested in hopes of getting an angel's eye view of Innistrad. Every regiment sent in daily dispatches of what they had encountered in the field. From these reports, Odric was piecing together where the church's power was still being threatened. But he didn't enjoy sitting in a leather chair in a cathedral chamber. He was a battlefield man, much better suited to combat maneuvers than negotiating the politics of a Vancian church. What of your friends in Hanwea? Odric asked, and was rewarded with a slight smile from the deadly serious Greet. She had led an assault against the legion of ghouls ravaging the moorlands, a success that had earned her a promotion to second in command. We're hunting down the last stragglers. Giza is being transported from the Riders' Lockup to Thraburn next week. Triple the escort, Odric said. She's caused me enough trouble in my lifetime. Greet nodded and scanned the last dispatch. Only a few more days, and Odric's administrative duties in Thraburn would be done. His time here had been valuable. He knew that the demons were still on the loose, but Avacyn herself was focused on the Hellvault's escapees. Necromantic activity still plagued the moorlands, but nothing like the heyday of Giza and Geralt's tyranny. Sigarda's forces were hunting the perpetrators of the Nephilia massacre. The vampires had all but slunk back to Stynesia. Someday soon, I will purge that province myself, but first, I must be sure that Avacyn's blessings hold. The mayor's son in Torbak tumbled down a riverbank and broke his leg. Odric sighed. Does the mayor of Torbak truly request the church's assistance to fix a boy's leg? It says he fell, fleeing a werewolf. He later died of fever and gangrene. As Odric pushed himself to his feet, it felt as if a steel trap had closed around his stomach. Every morning since Cursemute had rid the land of Lycanthrope's curse, he'd fallen to his knees, praising Avacyn's blessing. But in his heart he doubted. What if the Wolfer reverted to a murderous state? What if the abominations that had slaughtered so many of his kin returned? Rouse the regiment, he told Greet. It seems our days in Thraburn have come to an abrupt end. The mayor of Torbak was a pompous, red-faced administrator who took power after Avacyn returned. A sheep in fancy clothes, Odric thought. Not a leader in the darkest hours. The mayor had been ranting at them since they arrived in his chamber. Greet shifted uncomfortably beside Odric, no doubt wondering why he was letting this tirade go on for so long. I demand to know, what is this new devilry? Werewolves walk even during the half-moon? Did you not promise that this curse would be lifted from us? The Wilfir may slaughter us even during the daylight, Sir, there is no reason to believe that a Wilfir, Odric said. It slaughtered the widow of Bitterheart Hill, the mayor interrupted. Destroyed her cottage just last night, and took its time under her roof. Maybe it slumbered a bit, going to cook a hock of meat in her fireplace. The creature was in her cottage? Odric asked. This vile creature is terrorizing my village. Where are the angels? The Cathars waste time building bridges and trimming apple trees and... One more question, Odric interrupted. Has it attacked other cottages? Or just the widows? No cottages, but my son! He was just a boy! Odric laid his hand on the mayor's shoulder. At his touch, the man abruptly stopped speaking, and tears brimmed in his brown eyes. We will find the monster that killed your son, and put his head on a pike, Odric assured the mayor, who had lost his bluster and seemed to have no more words for them. Odric and Greet found their own way back to the street, where their horses waited. He acted as if it was our fault, Greet said angrily. He's a grieving man, Odric replied. A man who lost his son to a werewolf, he thought. Just as I have. As they rode toward the edge of the village, the red sun dropped below the horizon. Above, a slither of a pale moon appeared in the indigo heavens. The phases of the moon had once been Odric's guiding hand. The shape of the moon would figure into his battle tactics as much as supply lines and the morale of his Cathars. Odric spent years watching the night sky, noting how the moon touched the world in unexpected ways. Some seemed trivial. The leaves of the maple curled downward during a full moon. Others were crucial to survival. Ghouls moved quicker during a new moon. A waxing moon brought unnatural fighting among the rank and file. With Avinson's curse mute, Odric secretly felt that he had lost one of his tactical advantages. The moon was playing new games, and Odric had yet to learn the rules. What are your thoughts? Greet asked over the thud of the horse's hooves. I knew of the widow who was killed. They called her bitter-hot witch. Remember how he said it stayed in her cottage? Something about her attracted the monster. We'll set a trap near there. As they quickened their horses and made toward camp, Odric's eyes fixed on the pattern of mist around the meek silver in the sky. Whatever evil is now manifesting itself, it would stop in the shadow of the widow's cottage. He would mount its head on the gates of Thraben. By midnight, there was no moon at all. He and Greet lay in the undergrowth at the edge of a clearing. The only light came from the Witchbane's orb, a magical ward against the curses that hovered at the edge of the trees. The spell was the widow's handiwork, from a time before she had been outcast by the villagers as a witch. Odric had poured the blood of the widow on the ground below the orb, blood he'd taken from her lifeless corpse in the catacombs of a local church. The strange thing was that when he viewed her corpse, he'd seen no signs of violence on her. There was no evidence she had been killed by a werewolf attack, which Odric had assumed after talking with the mayor. She looked peaceful enough to have died of old age. A hooting call broke the night's silence. He recognized it as a Cathar signal that something had passed through the perimeter of scouts he had placed around the grove. He glanced at Greet, and she silently stood up and disappeared into the shadows. Odric moved into a crouching position, waiting for a second signal, which would confirm if it was natural or unnatural. The signal came again, urgently. Unnatural, then. Odric saw it before he heard it. A shadow, much taller than an average man, stretched across the clearing. He fought countless werewolves, and none of them had moved with such quiet deliberation. Odric glanced up at the inky sky, suddenly doubting his strategy. But the monstrosity had entered the clearing, and was leaping toward the scent of the widow's blood. Whatever was approaching, there was no time to question the plan. Fear holds no place in Faith's battle plan. Odric shouted to the Cathars in the treetops, who cast down a heavy net, sending the creature's massive bulk onto the forest floor. Odric sprinted toward it as it struggled under the ropes. He unsheathed his sword as he ran, ready to slice through the ropes and neck in one blow. "Wait!" screamed Greet, attempting to intercept her commander. "Wait! It has an axe!" Odric froze, seeing the massive weapon on the ground behind the monster. Then he saw the arm, a human arm, a hand, and human eyes peering out of a haggard face crisscrossed in sickly black veins. "In Avins's name!" Odric thundered. "What are you?" "I am weakened, cursed, and no threat to you," it said. "I am Garrick Wildspeaker." The guttural voice infuriated Odric. Every corpse that had been mutilated by a werewolf flashed through his memory. He would never forget the raw carnage of the attacks, and the senseless rage that left human bodies in bloody tatters. The only way Odric could comprehend those murders was if they had been done by mindless beasts. Mindless beasts don't have language or a voice to speak it. And never name. Garrick Wildspeaker. Even once Odric killed werewolves in human form, he never spoke their names. In his mind, the curse stripped them of any human identity once they were possessed. Odric bashed the blunt end of his sword against the mother's temple, hearing the crack of skull as it shattered under the weight of his blow. It slumped to the ground. He yanked the net off the monster and grabbed a handful of its long matted hair. He yanked it back to expose the bare throat where lifeblood still pulsed through its unnatural veins. "Wait!" Greet was at his shoulder. Odric lifted his sword, one blow to sunder the head from the body. "It's not a werewolf! Sir! Avensin's blessing didn't fail us." He wanted its head. "I'll throw it at the feet of Avensin and scream the name of every person murdered in her absence. Let's bring it to Thraben, alive. Leave the days of slaughter behind us. It's a new day in Innistrad." He wanted to scream at her. She fought the same wars and lived in the same grisly world as he. But unlike him, her conscience was untarnished. She's still hopeful. Greed's compassion would kill her someday soon. Odric let go of the monster and sheathed his sword. "Drug him and tie him down. It is a long road back to Thraben. Let Avensin measure the worth of his life."